One of my favorite rom-coms out there is 500 Days of Summer. One of the reasons for that is because I really haven't seen that many other rom-coms, and I can tell you this movie easily beats out The Proposal, so ooh, real challenge there. But the other is because it's just so relatable. Now, I think it being a relatable film is a key aspect as to why that movie is so successful and so well beloved after all these years of it being out. Now, before we dive too deeply into what I think makes the movie so relatable and, some of the fun topics of conversation that go into that there, I want to talk about other things I like in the movie. The movie has this really good non-linear pacing which allows for these great juxtaposed scenes to be smashed together, but it also really kind of shows an aspect of Tom that feels very bipolar is the best term I can think of for it, which I feel like kind of captures that feeling of like when you're interested in someone but you don't think they're interested in you. Like sometimes you can go like back and forth over a person, which just kind of captures this feeling that like he doesn't have his head screwed on straight, but it also gives off this feeling that like that he's kind of flippant, not so much in whether he likes Summer or not, but more in the idea that like he's hitting these different stages in rapid succession of like is he happy? Is he sad? Is he going to go for the girl? Is he not going to go for the girl? We see the broad strokes of this in the movie cut in between each other that kind of gives off this feeling of like what that kind of love can feel like on a daily basis sometimes. At least and especially in the early stage of the movie, because that's really all I can comment on. I'm Mr. Never Had a Girlfriend over here, so we're only qualified to talk about so much of this movie. But not only are these scenes cut between each other, not only is the plot non-linear, but the title card has this tree that is like growing older and dying and stuff as the movie goes on. It's goes along its chronology, which is a fun detail, and I feel like that's a big strength of this movie. There are so many just fun details all over the place. Whether that's Tom looking at himself and seeing Han Solo, whether that's random images that are thrown on screen that are probably just in Tom's head. There's a freaking animated bird. There's a Disney animated style bird just randomly in this movie. What more could you want from a movie? And this goes beyond just the most fun moments of the movie, because you see this also in like after he leaves Summer's place after the engagement party, and it becomes this like big like splash image or whatever. Or that point where he falls asleep in the theater and sees himself and Summer in a bunch of really pretentious and stupid looking French movies, which is funny, and yet I feel like it really doesn't distract from the emotional core of those moments either. Now, another really big positive of this film is the soundtrack, but if there's one thing I have a gripe with, if there's one thing that I didn't love too much, it's the fact that there's so many musical breaks. Like there's a point to where this movie sometimes feels like a commercial for something, like they're ready to hit us with the University of Anal Probing. Disappoint your parents in a whole new level. And sometimes it just in general just feels like it's overstaying its welcome. And music is a very tricky thing, because if you don't have enough music, you'll start to like your scenes will start to get really boring. But if you have too much music, it starts to become kind of distracting, or at least it certainly does for me. And it certainly does at certain points in this movie, but not every point, because I do really like the music throughout the movie, and I do think for the most part it's implemented well. Now, the entirety of this cast is absolutely killing it. Not just Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel, but just the entire cast throughout the whole film is really solid, which is good because not only is there a lot of comedy to this film that really works, but there's also this very natural feeling, which I don't know how to explain any further because this movie is kind of outlandish at points, but I feel like anybody who has seen the movie, you all know what I'm talking about.
Here's something that you wrote last week. Roses are red, violets are blue. Fuck you, whore.
There's a certain level of nuance to each of these characters and the ideas presented in the film that feel very mature and understandable. And the entire cast is doing a really good job of having these more outlandish or zany moments while still grounding the film in something that feels very real. I also love the split screen moments of the film where you see like two different sets of footage running together. You see this constantly throughout the film, and I just love it, especially when it like hits the climax of that with the expectations and reality segment of the film. I think that gives the movie a lot of personality, but also gives a lot of contrast and emotional depth to the film as well. So I really, really like it. And I think a lot of these filmmaking elements really come together to make something that, while is outlandish, it still feels really grounded and it feels really nuanced. And I think a big part of how it does that is in letting the nuance be there. And I think a big part of how they do that is not really giving the clearest answer of what to take away from it. Obviously, there is a takeaway. Like Tom learns, you don't want to necessarily put the entire cosmic significance of a moment or a person onto someone. You don't want to just assume someone is the one just because you like all the same crap, you know? Tom is absolutely making a lot of huge mistakes throughout the film, and you could even probably go as far as to say that he has a like Greek tragic flaw about his character. However, this kind of goes into like a bit of a debate I see on the internet, which is shocking because I almost never look at what the internet has to say about some of my favorite movies, or at least on like a fan base level. I'm not out here scouring the internet to know the general audience opinion of things, except for 500 Days of Summer, and I'm not entirely sure why. But because I've seen plenty of arguments for why Tom is absolutely the worst guy, the absolute bad guy of the film, especially from Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who also, says Tom is the bad guy of this film. But I also see the opposite, plenty of videos and people saying that Summer is actually pretty terrible. Summer's actually pretty awful. Now, I don't think this is a bad topic by any means. I think it's great, but I also think it's pretty funny because I don't think this is the kind of movie where you can just prescribe one of the main two cast members as the bad one, especially with the nuance and maturity this film has towards its characters. Like, can we really say that Tom is wrong to be like a hopeless romantic and want a really solid relationship? But also, Summer was very clear with him from the beginning that she didn't want anything serious. And Tom knew that, and he was largely okay with that. But also, let's not forget that Summer was the person who made the first move. You can go back and forth as to reasons why both of them are wrong, and I would agree with pretty much all of those reasons. At the end of the day, I think it's mostly that these people are incompatible with each other because they want different things in a relationship at the time they're together. It feels like a situation where Tom's tragic flaw is that he can't pretend like Summer is the one when she probably isn't. But also, Summer can't be just playing with people's hearts like that. I mean, she knew that Tom wanted a relationship. She knew he believed in love. Like that relationship messed up on both ends for different reasons. And I think the biggest takeaway of the film is that ultimately, regardless of whose fault it is, there's only one variable you can control, and that's yourself. Which is why we see Tom fix his life and get it in order. And does he learn his lesson? That's kind of how the movie ends with. And me personally, call me an optimist or whatever, I think he does. I think he's chilling. I hope. I think him and Autumn are big chilling after the movie. So anyway, those are a lot of my big thoughts I've had on the movie recently. I watched it on Valentine's Day. And then I had a friend approach me and ask me if I had seen the movie. And I was like, yeah. And then he wanted my thoughts. So we watched the movie again. So I felt like talking about it. On Letterboxd, I've given this film a 5 out of 5, which I stand by. I actually do really like this movie. I think it has so much charm, and I think it has so much just style all across the film. But I think it maintains a really grounded nature. It can get you to think, it can get you to feel, it can get you to just have a good time if that's all you want. And those are a lot of the things I really look for in a movie is did I have a good time? And then, above that, was it also making me think or making me feel or making me think and feel? So with that said, I hope you watch 500 Days of Summer again, and I hope you don't buy as many Twinkies as Tom.